Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Axis Mutual Fund. As you know, we try to come to you as often as possible to try to discuss trending themes, to discuss things that are, say, making newsworthy in the market, etc. Now, in the recent past, we've seen a lot of chatter around gold and silver. Gold, we've seen a significant rally in the last year in 25, and silver has seen a rally as well as volatility. And we thought this probably does deserve a longer discussion and probably good timing because Akshaya Tritiya is right around the corner. We thought auspicious day, so why not have this conversation? So I have with me today Mr. Pratik Tibrewal, Senior Fund Manager at Axis Mutual Fund. He's also worked in the commodities for about 15 years and is our in-house commodity expert. So without further ado, hi Pratik and welcome.
Hi Siddhant, thank you for having me.
So Pratik, as I mentioned at the outset, gold and silver has been a trending theme. Anyone and everyone and their uncles have been talking about gold and silver, right? So in my own case, I have people calling and saying, "तूने gold खरीदा क्या? Silver में कितना invest कर रहा है?" So I have a few questions for you today, and I am going to rattle them off very quickly.
Sure.
But before that, I have a very fundamental query, right? So when people say that अगर war हो गई तो gold तो बचा ही लेगा, right? That's what we've seen in the past also. But we see the recent war in West Asia, the Iran-Israel war, which is at a standstill for now, but let's see for how long. Curiously enough, gold has not rallied.
Correct.
Why is that?
So gold saw a high of $5,600 and currently it's trading at 4,800. We saw a low of 4,400. It is pretty volatile these days, but in this war particularly, the gold has not risen because of many reasons, to be very frank. So interest rates started going up, so people started investing in those asset classes because it has an yield to it. Secondly, people decided to be in cash. So because people decided to stay in cash, it is obviously that they'll sell some asset class and decide to stay in cash because the market is uncertain. Third, the US dollar started getting stronger. And when US dollar starts getting stronger, it's inversely correlated with gold. So because of these reasons, gold did not rally. And in fact, it corrected a bit whenever the war progressed. So these are the primary reasons.
But do you think these conditions are here to stay? So if the war, say, for example, let's take both scenarios. Today we have a ceasefire, so to say, then and the gold has not driven up. But if tomorrow hostilities restart, do you think the status quo being maintained?
See, volatility is going to be there. One should not be concerned about the volatility. One should just look it as an asset class to diversify their portfolio and be invested in for a long term. That is what the mindset should be. If you keep on targeting a bottom and you decide to buy it at the bottom, it's never going to happen. It's always going to be expensive. It was never cheaper at like $1,000, it was never cheaper at $2,000, and it was never cheaper today. It's not going to be cheaper tomorrow. So
right.
One needs to have a mindset of being invested in it forever, and it should be looked as an asset class which is going to be there in the portfolio forever.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. But let's take a couple of steps back, right? If we say from an Indian context कि यार मैंने तो gold में invest कर दिया, or if my mother says or if my grandmother said कि मैंने gold में invest किया है, is that actually investment or is that consumption?
So in India, basically what happens most of the times when we say कि हमने gold में invest कर दिया है, most of the times you buy a jewelry. And jewelry has a lot of charges associated with it. So firstly, it's not the 100% purity. It's not 24 karat because jewelry cannot be made in 24 karat. It will be either made in 22 karat or 18 karat. And it can be lower also because now we have 9 karat also in the market. So the purity will not be there of 24 karat, one thing. Second, there will be making charges, design specific charges. There will be GST, and all this will eat into your investment. Secondly, the bidders would be buyers. So for example, if you buy a jewelry worth rupees 1 lakh today at a $5,000 gold price, and when you are going to sell it, when the price of the gold is $5,000, you are still not going to make the same 1 lakh rupees when you are going to sell it because a lot of it will go in the charges. So also the purity, and you don't know, like, so for example, if you go to the same jeweler, he would at least acknowledge that this purity is there. If you go to other jeweler, he may say that this is not even 22 karat, this is 21 karat, right, and I can only give this. So all these hassles are there in jewelry.
Right.
So actually it's a consumption, but yes, it is eventually gold, so it is a kind of investment also. But this jewelry you don't treat it as an asset class and you don't monetize it. It's just there forever and it passes on from generation to generation unless and until there is some real crisis in the family and you want to sell it to get away from that particular crisis.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and I think gold is also very emotional, right? Because very often we see, especially with women or the girl child, that when a girl child is born, they say, "Okay, I bought a gold coin for my daughter."
Correct.
Things like that, right? Or very often even silver, that you buy a silver spoon and a glass, a cup, whatever,
Yeah.
right? So it's very emotional. So I think the important question is, how do we get our investors to consider even investing in gold to be consumption, or to be even fungible in that sense?
So sentimental values are always going to be there. So the reason why we buy a silver spoon and a glass when a baby is born, because silver is very highly antibacterial. So for example, if it is not washed for like 30-40 minutes, it can still be used again, because babies takes time to, the feeding takes time. So that is the reason this logic started, that we'll need a silver spoon and a silver glass. And the sentimental value is always going to be there. You cannot gift a gold ETF to your daughter. You will need to have some jewelry for her, and you will also plan for her wedding or all those things, which typically happens in India. So those things are going to be there, but ETF should be looked as an asset class, and it should be looked as a part of your portfolio and not with the sentimental value which is going to be passed from generation to generation.
Right.
In fact, this you can liquidate when times come, when the time is right, and you can sell it and create some cash when you really need it, instead of selling equity. So for example, if there is a drawdown in equity market, so you will sell it at a wrong price because there is panic selling happening and you also need some cash. But when you have gold in your portfolio, you know that this is not corrected much and my requirement of the cash will also be fulfilled with this, so you can use for this purposes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So let's understand, when in the context of investing, right? Say let's talk about an asset allocation case. So for example, if on 100 rupees that I have to invest in a month, I'm investing say 15 rupees in gold, and the remaining 85% or other 85 rupees in equities. Let's assume a mix of small cap, mid cap, and large cap, right? So that 15 rupees or that 15% weightage in my portfolio, what is gold expected to do there? What value does it bring?
So now assume that gold is not moving for like 2 to 3 years and it stays here at $4,800 to $4,900, or maybe for that matter $5,000. So it will bring a certain drag to your portfolio for sure when you are creating a 85% equity portfolio and a 50% gold portfolio. But what it does is it provides shock absorbers when the market is not doing well. When equity market is correcting by 10 to 15% at any given point in time, and every year we see that equity market corrects at some point on the time. So during those periods it will give you some relief when gold will not correct, and it will provide you that relief that this particular part of your portfolio is not corrected, and in fact there is a very high chance that it may increase also at those periods. So it is not necessary that it should be seen as a drawdown, but it will also provide some comfort. So your idea of a portfolio is that your risk should be minimal and your return should be higher. If you draw a 100% equity portfolio, just imagine like a period like March 2020 when COVID happened. That time you would have regretted doing that.
Right.
And now compare somebody who is having a multi-asset approach and he has a 50% equity portfolio, 30% fixed income portfolio, 15% gold and silver mix, and 5% cash. He would be more happy on that day.
Right.
In fact, that 5% cash he would have utilized to buy something at a very cheaper valuations.
Right.
So
yeah, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. So is it right to, or rather, is it not right to compare gold in isolation? So the way you're explaining it, gold makes more sense when it's a part of a larger portfolio, right? Because it acts as a hedge against inflation, but it also prevents, or rather it provides as a shock absorber against drawdowns.
correct. So what happens is the purchasing power parity of the gold will remain same forever, and this we have seen historically from so many years, from hundreds of years we have seen. So for example, what gold could have bought, 10 grams of gold could have bought in 2000, it could buy again in 2026, and it would happen in 2050 also. So that is the idea of putting some money and allocating some money towards gold. A hedge against inflation is there for sure. It will also, so for example, if any currency gets diluted, the whole pool, so during those eras, interest rate is rising, during those eras, gold will provide some relief to your portfolio.
Right. So let's dig deeper there.
Sure.
We've seen very often investors, or rather, the older investors, right, they've considered, say, real estate as a safe investment. So for example, elders in my house would be like, once you start making enough money, kahin na land leke rakh le, property leke rakh le.
Correct.
Although in today's day and age, it's
not possible.
It's
Yeah.
a foreign concept, but hypothetically speaking, right, what would have happened if say someone would have bought Let's take three examples. If someone would have bought a flat as an investment, let's assume everything costs the same in an ideal scenario. So 100 rupees worth of a flat, 100 rupees worth of gold, and 100 rupees worth of large cap equities, right? And if you look at the last 25 years, where do you think each of these would have landed up?
So see, the idea should be that you should invest in each and everything. So everything comes with its own challenges. So for example, equity, from time to time this answer will change. So for example, now from 2 years equity has not performed well, so it would look like a drawdown on equity. But when real estate is not doing well, it will look like a drawdown on real estate. And if you just see at 2020, gold was not like, performing from so many years, it was giving very subdued returns. So but now it suddenly looks very attractive. So it depends on what scenario you ask, but ideally your approach should be to invest in all the asset classes and make sure that gold is part of your overall portfolio in the overall scheme of things. If you are okay with some volatility, you can give some allocation to silver also. We don't have option for copper currently, but if we ever have a copper ETF also, then that will also make a sense.
Right.
So that you have exposure to as many asset classes as is possible.
Right. No, and I think for the folks watching this, Pratik's mentioned something quite important, and he's mentioned it a couple of times, which is asset allocation. So gold in isolation probably is not the right way to judge it, but also judge the special glitter it adds to the rest of the portfolio.
Correct.
Pardon my pun.
Yeah.
But I think that's very important. And Pratik, just for that, let's talk briefly about an NFO we did very recently, which is the Axis Gold and Silver passive FOF. I think this is one of those products where we are we're taking active calls on how much gold and silver we are holding. Let's talk about that. I myself am an investor and I watch it quite keenly. Right, if you're maintaining a 60-40 or a 70-30 in favor of gold, like you've said that silver is very volatile. But we also understand that silver has a lot of industrial values or industrial uses which have now started coming to the forefront.
Correct.
And that there is no new mines of silver, etc., that have been discovered. So it's a finite resource, and anything finite automatically zooms in value.
Correct.
So where do you think we are on the portfolio?
Currently our approach is of gold 57% and 43% is what we have kept it at silver, and we look it at a very lucrative product. If one is not aware of which product to go and which not to go, this will at least we are trying to create certainly better alpha than what a normal gold ETF would give. And that is the whole idea about this particular portfolio. Here we will actively manage. The ratios would be 65 to 35, be it 65% gold and 35% silver, be it 65% silver and 35% gold. Currently the gold silver ratio is in between of 65 to 63 to 65. So none of the commodities are overvalued at this point in time. In fact, gold looks like to outperform silver in the short run. So that is why the gold is kept certainly heavy in this particular format. And across industries there are products for this, and they have also similar allocations.
Right. And again, for the folks watching this, I myself am an investor in this fund, and I think it forms about say 10 to 12% of my portfolio, and it's all via SIP.
Yeah.
Right. And I think during the NFO, when we were doing the NFO, I think when we sat down earlier, this is something we had discussed even back then, where a staggered approach allows you to make the most of the current price of the commodity, so that in the long term, not only do you accumulate a certain number of units of the commodity, but also have the magic of compounding that helps you.
Correct. So SIP will 100% help, because you would be investing at all the prices, and that would bring your average cost down. Instead of just buying it and bulking it up in one particular purchase, it will help to bring down the cost at a particular level, and you will eventually see return happening when few years are ahead in the game, and that particular trajectory of that particular product is done. So if you keep it doing for a few years, the return would be very substantial. If nothing will happen, then also I'm sure that it will beat inflation, which has historically been proven.
Right. And in the current day and age, we really don't know where inflation is going. Correct. Right. So yeah, before we move on to the next couple of points, I just want to highlight that our Axis Gold Fund and Silver FOF have a few very unique benefits. Right. So let's look at Axis Gold Fund. Right. It is 24 karat gold, guaranteed, 99.5% purity. It is physically backed, right? You don't have any security concerns, etc., because it's the security is being held by the AMC, which is physically backing the ETF, which is the underlying security. And also there's no GST. Most importantly, there's no making charge. Pratik, let me give you a very simple example on this, right? So my mother and I had gone to one of these large, big brand gold stores recently, and it was her birthday. I thought might as well get her a chain in my meager means. So I saw, okay, how much is this for, etc. So the guy said, sir, this is 18 carat, and making charges he started with 30%. Ultimately, haggled and brought him down to 18%. And ultimately, I'm telling my mother, I said, Mom, this is 18 carat. And he's charging us 18% on making. You'd rather invest in this fund? You know, you're getting 99.5% purity,
Correct.
no making charges, no GST. So I think that's a very important feature, is it not?
So that is what the advantage of investing with ETF and with gold funds are, because they are physically backed, there is no risk, and it brings credibility because these are SEBI regulated products, unlike any digital products which are there in the market. So it makes more sense to be invested with ETFs and fund of funds. And these are physically backed 100%, like you mentioned, it's 995 purity, and it is insured. So you forgot to mention that it's insured. So for
Yes.
example, if there is theft, this risk doesn't exist here. If there is a flood, if there is any terrorist activities happening, these all things are covered in this insurance. So it brings a lot of peace of mind. And when you buy this physical gold, you eventually need a locker to keep it. So you will go again to the bank locker and keep it, and this involves a lot of hassle. So I'm not saying that one doesn't need any jewelry. It has a social this thing involved with this social
Right.
stigma, and all those things are attached with it. So you will need some jewelry also, but ideally you should not look at it as investment. That should be looked like a generational wealth which you are going to pass towards the future generations, and you should look at that particular investment like that. You should not look at it like a gold investment, because you don't end up selling it.
Right. I think that brings me back to Akshaya Tritiya, right? Very often we see, say, let's look at Akshaya Tritiya, let's look at times around Diwali, right? When we say, चलो आज अच्छा दिन है, आज gold खरीदना और आज silver खरीदना. Why is it so that such auspicious days demand you to buy gold or silver?
So this traditionally our ancestors have taught it to us, because they always wanted us to have that belief that we have some exposure towards gold. So in those era there were no products where you can buy from a click of a button at the comfort of your house, and you can invest as little as 100 rupees, like how you can invest in as Access Gold ETF or all these products. So during those eras, these were like the defined times when you have to buy. Even if you don't have, you make sure that you arrange some money out of your business and make sure that you buy this particular product in those days. So Diwali was one of them, birth of a child, marriage, and Akshaya Tritiya. These 4-5 occasions are such that they have taught us to buy on these particular days. But what happens is the premium on this particular day is higher because the demand of the physical is extremely high on this day. So again, you end up paying a certain premium because the demand is particularly high on these days. So you pay slight premium. Maybe it is 1%, maybe it is 0.5%, but usually it will trade a slight premium over LBMA on these particular days.
Right.
So, but this has been taught to us so that we accumulate gold in the longer journey of our life, and that can be used to help. It can help us in times of distress in family.
Right.
And if distress is not there, it will be carried forever.
Right. No, that does make a lot of sense.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is learnings from our ancestors. But yeah, I think we can always upgrade that learning, right? We can say, like we've discussed, a gold fund really gives you the same and more. And I don't think we differentiate. We don't have a surge pricing on these days, do we?
Actually we also buy physical eventually. So the surge pricing will be there, but if you are investing via SIP, it will not matter to you, because you have a fixed amount which is going on a fixed day, and that is coming into the system on a fixed day, and you will be more concerned about the NAV than what price the fund manager is buying on that particular day. But yes, on that particular day we will also end up paying a premium because the market is at a premium.
Right.
Yes.
So, Pratik, in the process leading up to this, we've spoken to a lot of our investors who currently hold investments in gold, silver, and gold and silver funds, respectively. A lot of them are from the north of India. A lot of them are from the middle India, so from states like UP, MP, Bihar, Jharkhand, etc. Now, one query that comes from the Bharat Belt is that कि मैं गोल्ड क्यों खरीदूं, मैं तो रियल एस्टेट में इन्वेस्ट कर सकता हूं, मैं लैंड लेके बैठ सकता हूं. आई नो वी हैव डिस्कस्ड दिस जस्ट रिसेंटली, बट कैन यू हेल्प अस ड्रॉ डाउन और अदर अंडरस्टैंड दैट व्हाई शुड आवर इन्वेस्टर्स स्टिल कंसिडर गोल्ड? And maybe if you can help, let's assume you're talking to, say, a 55-year-old investor, consider him from the north of India, and you're looking at 100 rupees to invest. What would your allocation be to, say, equity, fixed income, gold, and real estate, where you're looking at say a 15-20 year outlook, which is going to be a retirement fund, as well as wealth that you can create to pass on.
So see, actually I'll just give you an example. So now imagine that some investor is there who's 55 years old, and now just imagine that he has a portfolio of 100% equity and he is retiring in 2020. Now suddenly COVID comes up in March and the equity crashes. So he would regret this decision of having 100% money parked in one particular asset class. But now imagine an investor who has a well diversified portfolio wherein he has 50% equity, 30% fixed income, 15% gold and silver, and 5% cash. He would be more comfortable in during this particular scenario. Now just coming to your example specifically, whether real estate is better or no, see, it depends. Now at what time frame you are seeing. In March 2020 it would have not looked like a good example, but when the real estate prices are skyrocketing, that time it would look like a lucrative opportunity. So ideally one should invest in like the whole basket is what I would particularly say, but real estate is something different because that is not on the portfolio of what you tend to create over your lifespan. So ideally you should start with more allocation towards equity, slightly towards fixed income, and 15% in gold and silver. As in when you you mature in your age, you should move towards fixed income and reduce your equity exposure and keep gold to 10 to 15%. And this approach will eventually have a very good return on your portfolio, with risk basically with reducing the risk on your portfolio. And maybe you will have a slightly lesser return than a 100% equity portfolio, but then it will bring a lot of peace of mind to your overall scheme of things. And you should treat it as an insurance more than just to look it as an investment and just to look it as an particular investment which is going to generate return on your portfolio.
Right. Now another question that came up, and I spoke to this gentleman and he said कि मैं अभी गोल्ड नहीं सोच रहा हूँ खरीदने का, थोड़ा बाजार टूटेगा उसके बाद मैं खरीदूंगा. And this we've heard very often, right?
Correct.
We've heard this from customers who are waiting to time their entry in equity. We've seen the same thing in commodities.
Correct.
And I think across, right, that's just Indian behavior, right?
Yeah.
We are value seekers.
Yeah.
We think ये product है थोड़ा सस्ता होगा तब खरीद लेंगे. Now, can you help us understand that, assume I am an example here, right? If I say कि थोड़ा बाजार टूटेगा अभी 4800 पे, जब 4000 के नीचे जाएगा तब खरीदेंगे.
So what happens is when you target a certain price, when the price will come 4,000, actually you will think that this is going to come at 3,000. So you will not buy at 4,000. And this will keep on happening again and again. So you will never be able to fish at the bottom. You need to basically enter it. If you think that the prices are going to correct, maybe you can do a smaller part of your investment can come in right now. And then you can design it in such a way that eventually it will average out in 1 year, 2 year, 3 years time period of time. But if you just target a particular price and then for example it reaches 6,000, then what will you do?
Yeah.
Gold is such a global commodity that nobody knows what is going to happen tomorrow.
True.
It is just that on the historical approach is such that it has beaten inflation in the long run, and that is what everybody believes, that it will beat inflation in the long run.
Right. So let's look at let's go back a few years, right? What would your advice be, or rather what would you think you'd want to say to an investor who's gone through a few of these cycles, who's gone through the 2008 subprime crisis, who's gone through, say, the pandemic, who's gone through the Russia-Ukraine war and now the West Asia war? How do you think if they would have had, let's assume two cases, right? Let's assume A and B. A had asset allocation, like you said, had equity, fixed income and commodity, and B had, say, only equity and fixed income. How do you think the two would have, how would they have lives look?
So equity and fixed income guy would be slightly better off than the 100% equity, because he would have, what happens is when your portfolio corrects very sharply, you panic. And in panic, you end up making wrong decisions. Very matured investors also have made wrong decisions, and everybody has agreed it, in front of the people that they have made wrong decisions. And in that panic, you may end up selling. Just imagine selling something in 2020 valuations, at March 2020 valuations, and just compare the same share price today. It would be like a very big burn in your heart. So, and just compare the guy who has a fixed income also. So his portfolio would be very much protected with the fixed income exposure, and he would be slightly better off. I'm not saying the returns would not be negative on his portfolio. It would be for sure negative, but then it would be at least manageable. He would have been a little more rational in taking decisions. And now also put one more guy who has an exposure to gold also, for example. So he would be very better off, because gold corrected during the initial COVID, but then eventually it rallied from there, and it has rallied like crazy in the last 2-3 years. So just imagine somebody having a 15% exposure towards gold from 2020 to 2026. It would have done wonders to his portfolio.
Let's also look at gold from a perspective of commercial usage, right? We've seen both. We spoke about this in our NFO also, but we've traditionally learned that gold is the best conductor of heat.
Correct.
Right, and it has a lot of industrial applications also. Especially, I remember reading about this briefly that NASA used to use a lot of gold sheets to line their crafts in the heat shields to let some heat in to get the signature readings and then have whatever other layers to prevent the heat from coming to the cabin crew, etc. So, what sort of use cases are currently used for commercial purposes?
See, commercial is less because it is very expensive now. So the commercial purposes, like for NASA, it is still possible because they would need the best kind of the infrastructure for whatever their project is there. So they may still use it. But ideally, the commercial use is gone with gold because the industrial metal is silver, and people have moved towards silver. In fact, now silver is getting so expensive that people are looking for other alternatives so that this particular thing they can sustain their industry with some alternative. But still silver is the industrial metal, and gold is more of like a metal which people buy for security, to hedge against inflation, to diversify. Central banks buy it, and central banks are increasing in gold from last 3 to 4 years. 2005 they have slightly decreased, the buyings have not reached 1000 tons, but 22, 23, 24 they have bought almost more than 1000 tons a year. So central banks are continuously buying. In fact, there is a theme of de-dollarization which is happening because China is selling a lot of US treasuries and buying a lot of gold, and BRICS nations are buying a lot of gold and selling US treasuries. In 2026, the first time it has happened that US treasuries holding in the global central bank has been slightly lesser than what gold is today. So people are moving towards gold. So I'm not saying that this means that dollar is not important. Dollar is very important currently, but then at least things are moving towards de-dollarization is what it shows. The data shows. What happens, we don't know. We cannot comment on that.
Right. No, that's true. Let's also look at an example, right? Like we mentioned, commercial uses of gold are almost negligible now. But silver still continues to hold a lot of significance there. I think silver sits in a sweet spot where it's both commercially viable and useful, as well as consumed extensively in countries like India, and still considered a vehicle for investment.
Correct.
So, what are the top use cases that come to your mind commercially for silver?
So silver is used in solar panels. That is the topmost use case. Then jewelry is there. Then it is used in a lot of electrical equipments, in medical devices. So there are many use cases actually, and silver is the main industrial metal which is there currently because it also provides a conductor to the heat,
right,
and all these things are there. So we need to see that what happens when it reaches $120. Will the demand be there at these levels, because the price of that particular product will also increase with silver prices going up. In EV cars, silver is used a lot, so we need to see how much impact is it bringing on that particular car's cost when this reaches $100 or $120. We have seen extreme volatility in silver. We saw $120, then we saw $60. This has happened in this 1 year. So silver is a very volatile product, so one needs to be very much aware when he is getting to that particular product that it will come with a lot of volatility.
Right. Now I have a couple of odd questions for you.
Sure.
Right. Let's assume you're doing portfolio management for me, right? If I'm a 30-year-old investor from Mumbai and I have roughly 100,000 rupees to invest in a month, right? What percentage of this do you think should be gold/silver? Let's assume I have, say, certain life goals to assume I'm going to work till the age of 60 and then retire. I'll probably not retire even then, I don't know. But yeah, life goals may include buying a house, buying luxury cars, travel, etc., etc. So out of 100,000 rupees, how much do you think in a month I should park towards gold, silver? And do you think they should be lumpy monies as and when I get them available, or do you think an SIP is still the best route there?
See, SIP will always be the best route. You can always do a step-up SIP whenever you are getting increments, and those bonuses you can do a lump sum investment in the products. For the allocation, it will be to each its own. But for example, you have mentioned brightly your idea, so it can be a 60% equity because you are 30 years old, so your investment horizon would be a little longer. So you have the bandwidth to carry that equity risk for a longer period, and It also depends on the maturity of the investor. If somebody who is there who will panic a lot if his portfolio will show a 5 to 10% negative return, then it makes more sense to reduce the equity exposure and increase the fixed income exposure, so that in the long run he is able to sustain that particular portfolio for a longer period of time. So just being invested in that in product for a very long period of time will eventually get him the best return. So 60% equity in your case, 25% in a fixed income, and 15% in commodities, and rest in cash is the ideal mix. So there are so many multi-asset funds in our country. So if you see, majority of them carry 15 to 20% of exposure towards gold and silver mix. So this proves, the overall AUM is pretty large in these particular funds. So this defines that everybody thinks that this approach is good, and a 15% allocation towards gold and silver is the ideal way to go ahead.
Right. So Pratik, but do you think this will be can gold become a core investment strategy for someone's portfolio?
100% allocation towards gold will not become a core, because it will in fact do bad, because you will miss on the opportunities on the asset class which are actually going to generate return. So 100% gold portfolio will not make any sense. Yes, about the 15% core or a 10% core, yes, it makes a lot of sense. It may bring down the overall return in the shorter period time, but then in the longer scheme of things it will do only good to you.
Right. तो प्रतीक, हमने डिस्कस किया है कि गोल्ड सिल्वर कैसे आपके पोर्टफोलियो का एक हिस्सा होना चाहिए. आप ये भी देख लेते हैं कि अक्षय तृतीया आने वाला है, एक आध दिन में है अब. तो हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स को एक्सिस गोल्ड फंड, एक्सिस सिल्वर फंड और एक्सिस गोल्ड एंड सिल्वर फंड क्यों लेना चाहिए?
इसलिए लेना चाहिए बिकॉज ये 24 कैरेट गारंटी करता है, ये 995 प्योरिटी गारंटी करता है, ये इंश्योर्ड है, फिजिकली बैक्ड है, और देर आर नो स्टोरेज हैसल. कोई स्टोरेज हैसल नहीं है. इट्स ईजियर टू बाय. यू कैन बाय एज स्मॉल एज 100 रुपीज़ अमाउंट इन दिस पर्टिकुलर प्रोडक्ट. तो ये सोचना चाहिए लेने के पहले.
इनफैक्ट आपको पता होगा, पर प्रतीक, हम 10 रुपये से भी डेली SIP देते हैं एक्सिस गोल्ड फंड में. तो हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स, हमारे निवेशक 10 रुपये प्रतिदिन से भी शुरू कर सकते हैं. तो आप जहाँ भी हैं, केवल 10 रुपये से स्टार्ट कीजिए, 100 रुपये कीजिए, आपके ऊपर आपकी इच्छा है. बट गोल्ड तो आई थिंक जैसे प्रतीक ने बताया, हर इन्वेस्टर के पोर्टफोलियो का एक हिस्सा होना ही चाहिए. क्यों प्रतीक?
करेक्ट, एकदम सही.
तो प्रतीक, एक क्वेश्चन देख लेते हैं कि जो हमारा एक्सिस गोल्ड फंड है वो इन्वेस्ट करता है एक्सिस गोल्ड ETF में.
करेक्ट.
राइट. हमारा एक्सिस गोल्ड ETF जो है वो फिजिकली बैक्ड होता है.
करेक्ट.
आजकल बोला जाता है कि जैसे हमने देखा था, सेबी ने आके बोला था कि डिजिटल गोल्ड आउटलॉ हो गया था, तो फिजिकली बैक्ड गोल्ड होता है ETFs में, म्यूचुअल फंड्स में. आप हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स को समझा सकते हैं कि फिजिकली बैक्ड गोल्ड इन्वेस्टमेंट की बेनिफिट क्या होती है?
तो बेसिकली आप जो भी पैसा डाल रहे हो ये पर्टिकुलर ETF में या गोल्ड फंड ऑफ फंड में या गोल्ड सिल्वर फंड ऑफ फंड में, ये सारा पैसा इवेंचुअली जाके फिजिकल गोल्ड और फिजिकल सिल्वर बाय कर रहा है. इसमें से कोई भी पैसा आपका डेरिवेटिव में या ऐसे कहीं पे लगा नहीं है. डेरिवेटिव इसके लिए लिया जाता है सिड में, बिकॉज ऐसा कोई सिनारियो है कि कोविड है कि भाई माल आ ही नहीं रहा है अब्रॉड से, क्योंकि एक्सक्लूसिव माइनिंग सब बाहर है. जब माल आ ही नहीं रहा है तो वो टाइम पे आप एक्सपोजर कैसे लें? तो इसके लिए डेरिवेटिव का सिड में मेंशन किया जाता है कि भाई अगर नहीं माल मिलता है तो हम लोग डेरिवेटिव ले सकते हैं. तो ऐसा है कि ये पूरा फिजिकली बैक्ड है और फिजिकली बैक्ड ही रहेगा ETF, और यही आइडिया है.
तो मतलब मोटा मोटा था हम ऐसे कह सकते हैं कि फिजिकल गोल्ड खरीदने में और एक्सिस गोल्ड का फंड खरीदने में ज़्यादा फ़र्क नहीं है.
कोई फ़र्क
सिर्फ फ़र्क है कि हम ना मेकिंग चार्जेस लगाते हैं, ना GST लगाते हैं, ना आपको फिजिकली उसको स्टोर करने की ज़रूरत है, ना आपको सिक्योरिटी का हैसल है, ना आपको इंश्योरेंस का हैसल है.
Correct.
और 99.5% प्योरिटी तो आती ही है.
करेक्ट.
राइट. तो प्रतीक, एक सवाल हमें आया था. आई थिंक एक यंग इन्वेस्टर है, ये बोलते हैं कि आजकल के जेनजी इन्वेस्टर गोल्ड को थोड़े अलग तरीके से देखते हैं. वो ज्वेलरी कम और उसको फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट की तरह देखते हैं. तो हैव यू हैड एन अपॉर्चुनिटी टू स्पीक टू द यंगर, से द जेनजी पीपल वी हैव इन आवर ऑफिस, राइट? आई थिंक दैट द थिंकिंग इज क्वाइट डिफरेंट देन आवर्स.
ये एक सिस्टमैटिक चेंज है जो हो रहा है, क्योंकि जो हमारे पहले एंसेस्टर्स थे वो सिर्फ ज्वेलरी लेते थे, फिर हमारे पेरेंट्स आए, उन्होंने बार्स एंड कॉइन्स लेना चालू किया, हम लोग ETF ले रहे हैं. अब आने वाली जनरेशन शायद इसको सिर्फ एज अ फाइनेंशियल प्रोडक्ट देखने वाली है, या एकदम लिमिटेड ज्वेलरी बनाने वाली है, ऐसा भी हो सकता है. बट ये एक सिस्टमैटिक चेंज है जो जनरेशन टू जनरेशन चेंज होते जाएगा. इसके बारे में तो मतलब क्या ही कह सकते हैं.
फेयर. एंड क्या लगता है आपको 2026 में गोल्ड कहाँ जाएगा?
सो एक्चुअली वी आर नॉट अलाउड टू गिव एनी टारगेट्स एज सच, बट जो रिपोर्ट्स हैं, जो ओवरऑल दिख रहा है ऐसा पूरा, स्कीम ऑफ थिंग्स में ऐसा लग रहा है कि 5,300 जैसा लेवल्स जाना चाहिए, 5,100 से 5,300 का लेवल 2026 में.
Okay. Now, this is a very interesting question. This is, we've gotten from one of our very, very erudite investors. They ask, how do rising interest rates and a stronger US dollar affect the trajectory of gold? I think you briefly touched upon this when we discussed the war, but just at the cost of repetition.
So when interest rate increases, people tend to invest in those products because that has an yield to it. So they eventually sell other asset classes so that the liquidity is created. So in this era, gold is inversely correlated to US dollar. So whenever the interest rate will increase, the US dollar will do well, and that's when the gold will correct. So that is what the whole cycle is.
Final question for me. I think this is again from one of our very high risk investors. कि क्या सिल्वर गोल्ड को आउट परफॉर्म कर सकता है, एंड गिवन कि इंडस्ट्रियल डिमांड ज़्यादा है इसकी, आप क्या बोलेंगे?
सिल्वर ने आउट परफॉर्म कर लिया है लास्ट ईयर. अभी का जो लेवल है उस पर ऐसा लग रहा है कि गोल्ड आउट परफॉर्म करेगा सिल्वर को. हालांकि सिल्वर वॉलेटाइल है बहुत, तो कोई पीरियड ऐसा भी आ सकता है कि सिल्वर आउट परफॉर्मेंस रहे. आपको अगर नहीं समझ रहा है कि गोल्ड लें कि सिल्वर ले, तो गोल्ड सिल्वर फंड ऑफ फंड जैसा प्रोडक्ट में आप इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं, जहाँ पे फंड मैनेजर कोशिश करते हैं कि वो आपको स्लाइटली बेटर रिटर्न दे खाली गोल्ड की जगह पे. स्लाइटली बेटर रिटर्न आपको ऐसे प्रोडक्ट में मिल जाए बिकॉज वहाँ पे एक्टिव अलोकेशन है. तो टाइम टू टाइम वो लोग चेंज करते रहेंगे. जब गोल्ड सिल्वर रेशियो एकदम ऊंचा पहुँच जाएगा तब वो लोग उस तरीके से अलोकेट करेंगे उस प्रोडक्ट को कि उसमें ज़्यादा फ़ायदा हो. जब गोल्ड सिल्वर रेशियो एकदम नीचे आ जाएगा तो उस तरीके से अलोकेट करेंगे पोर्टफोलियो को कि उसमें ज़्यादा रिटर्न मिले. तो अगर वैसा आपका आइडिया है कि भाई मेरे को एक ही प्रोडक्ट में इन्वेस्ट करना है एंड आई वांट द बेस्ट रिटर्न आउट ऑफ इट, तो एक्सिस गोल्ड सिल्वर फंड ऑफ फंड विल मेक वंडर्स फॉर यू.
परफेक्ट. आई थिंक वही है. आई थिंक 100 बात की एक बात है. एक्सिस गोल्ड एंड सिल्वर फंड ऑफ फंड है, आपको गोल्ड सिल्वर दोनों एक ही फंड में मिल जाते हैं. तो आई थिंक विद दैट प्रतीक वी सॉर्ट ऑफ कम टू द एंड ऑफ टुडेज डिस्कशन. थैंक यू फॉर योर टाइम. बट फॉर द folks watching, you know, we've discussed this a couple of times, but I do invite you to come visit our website axismf.com, explore our Axis Gold Fund, Axis Silver Fund of Fund, and Axis Gold and Silver Fund of Fund. Again, at the cost of repetition, I'm going to mention this both in Hindi and English for our audiences. Axis Gold and Silver Fund के साथ आपको मिलती है 99.5% प्योरिटी. आपको ना मेकिंग चार्जेस लगते हैं, ना जीएसटी चार्जेस लगते हैं, ना कोई सिक्योरिटी, ना कोई इंश्योरेंस का झंझट होता है. आप सिर्फ 100 रुपये से इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं. इनफैक्ट आप एक्सिस गोल्ड फंड में 10 रुपये से डेली स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं इन्वेस्टमेंट. तो आई थिंक ये तो बहुत परफेक्ट अपॉर्चुनिटी है. अक्षय तृतीया आ गया, इन्वेस्ट कीजिए. आप क्या बोलेंगे प्रतीक उसको?
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल इन्वेस्ट करिए. अक्षय तृतीया इज़ अ गुड डे टू स्टार्ट. अगर आपने अभी तक आपका जर्नी शुरू नहीं किया है तो एक एसआईपी के ज़रिए आपको इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए और लॉन्गर पीरियड, फॉर एवर पीरियड 10 to 15% अलोकेशन गोल्ड में रखना चाहिए. अगर आप वोलेटिलिटी के लिए साथ ओके हो तो आपको गोल्ड और सिल्वर का मिक्स देखना चाहिए, जहाँ पे आप 10% गोल्ड और 5% सिल्वर इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हो.
परफेक्ट. तो आई थिंक ladies and gentlemen, visit us at axismf.com. Download our mobile app. You can just do a Google search for Axis Gold Fund. You'll find us there. You can make a purchase in under 2 minutes. We have a new platform actually, Pratik. We've launched. We have a new website.
Yes, I'm aware.
And we've been getting some really good reviews. So I hope the folks here go visit us. Do share your feedback also. More than anything else, invest. You can reach out to us on our social channels or on our call centers. We are available and we're more than happy to answer any queries. And with that, we will be back soon. We'll be back with Pratik or any of our other speakers very soon. And yeah, we'll see you then. Till then, happy investing.
Thank you so much, guys.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.